The gala was one of those nights where the air buzzed with artificial stardom and the chandeliers held secrets in their crystals. Manhattan's Dreamscape Foundation Gala wasn't new to Scarlett Johansson. She had attended before, always reluctantly, always at someone else's insistence. But that night, something had pulled her in, a strange itch for connection she couldn't name. The Plaza Hotel was all champagne, high ceilings, and curated laughter. Scarlett arrived alone, her publicist trailing behind, already flitting off to find the next camera-friendly moment. Scarlett stood near a giant floral installation shaped like a phoenix, sipping on something citrusy and disinterested. She wore a vintage black velvet gown, elegant and sharp, like a line drawn across an old memory. Her face was half lit by soft golden light, the other half shaded like a mystery unsolved. She wasn't looking for anyone, but someone found her. Reynolds was running late, half regretting the decision to show up. He'd spent the last few days doing press in LA and had flown red-eye just to attend. He wasn't quite Hollywood royalty yet, still balancing between that funny guy and maybe serious actor material. Tired, underdressed, and more sardonic than usual, he entered the room with little fanfare, nodding at a couple of producers, ignoring the flashbulbs. Then he saw her. It wasn't love at first sight, it wasn't anything that cinematic, but it was something. That kind of pause your brain makes when it sees a color it can't name but wants to paint with. Scarlett caught him staring, not creepily, just curiously, and arched one brow with theatrical precision. He smirked, tipping his head in acknowledgement. She turned her gaze away with a shrug, sipping her drink, but a smile danced at the corners of her lips. Minutes later, he found himself at her side, under the guise of getting hors d'oeuvres. They both reached for the same smoked fig tart, fingers brushing. "Sorry," Ryan said, withdrawing slightly. "Didn't mean to spark a tart-related turf war." Scarlett gave him a slow look. "You didn't spark it, you just lost it." A beat. Then they both laughed. "Ryan," he offered, extending his hand. "Scarlett," she replied, shaking it briefly, her grip cooler than expected, but sure. They moved away from the food, away from the noise. What followed wasn't flirtation, not really. It was curiosity in its first language, banter. They spoke about everything and nothing, favorite soundtracks, awkward auditions, the strange loneliness of being recognized everywhere but understood nowhere. He told her a story about accidentally walking into the women's restroom at a charity event and giving a speech before realizing his mistake. She laughed so hard she nearly dropped her glass. Hours passed. They didn't notice. At some point, her heels came off. At some point, he stopped checking his phone. At some point, the hotel staff began extinguishing candles, gently ushering guests out. Neither wanted to leave first. "I think this might be the longest conversation I've had at one of these things without checking for the exits," Scarlett said, slipping on her heels. "That's because I'm dazzlingly irresistible," Ryan deadpanned. She smirked. "That, or I enjoy pitying your terrible jokes." They shared a cab, platonic for now. When they arrived at her building, she lingered at the door. "Good night, Reynolds," she said, eyes lingering just a little longer. He didn't kiss her, didn't ask for her number, just smiled. "Night, Johansson." But she left the door open half a second longer than necessary, enough for something unspoken to pass between them. A question neither had the answer to yet. The next time they met wasn't an accident, but it wasn't exactly planned either. A week after the gala, Ryan sent her a bouquet of sunflowers, tied with a note scrawled in hurried ink. "To the woman who stole my tart and my attention, R." She laughed when she read it, not the polite kind, but the honest kind, the one that surprises you, like finding warmth in a drafty room. They started meeting in stolen spaces. A cafe in the West Village where no one cared who they were. Late-night walks in Central Park bundled in scarves, anonymous under the low glow of street lamps. He introduced her to an obscure Canadian band she'd never heard of. She took him to a poetry slam where he felt so awkward he swore the mic stand was judging him. It was all slow and shy and oddly tender, not a romance born of passion, but one nurtured by quiet understanding. They didn't need to dazzle each other. The real magic was how easily they breathed in the same silence. She told him about her childhood in Manhattan, the years of auditioning, of balancing school with scripts, of people assuming she was older than she felt. He told her about Vancouver, about being the youngest of 4, about how humor became his armor when grief and distance crept in. They kissed for the first time on her rooftop under a December sky. It wasn't perfect. His nose bumped hers, her hair got caught in his collar, but it felt perfect because it was theirs. Their public debut happened unexpectedly. They were leaving a used bookstore in Brooklyn, Scarlett with a battered copy of Leaves of Grass, Ryan carrying 2 volumes of Vonnegut, when a photographer caught them mid-laugh. They weren't holding hands, but their closeness said everything. The photos went viral, Hollywood's most unexpected couple. The world had opinions. She was too young, he was too unserious. They'd never last. But they didn't care. In the early days, they were a fortress built for 2. Sunday mornings with jazz records and pancakes, Scrabble games that turned into philosophical debates, watching films on mute just to make up their own dialogue. They traveled when they could, slipping away between projects. Japan in spring, Scotland in fall. They once rented a cabin in the Rockies for 2 weeks and went entirely off-grid. No phones, no cameras, just long hikes, campfires, and stargazing. "I think I could disappear with you," Scarlett said once, curled into his side beneath a sky so dark it felt endless. "You wouldn't disappear," Ryan whispered. "You'd become even more visible." They weren't flashy, they weren't chaotic, but they were real. And in a world of curated images, that made them rare. Then came the engagement. It wasn't a grand gesture, no hot air balloon or sky-written proposal, just a lazy Sunday, eggs cooling on the stove, both in sweatpants, hair messy from sleep. Ryan turned to her mid-bite and said, "You know, I think I want to annoy you for the rest of my life." She blinked, caught off guard. "That your way of proposing?" He smiled. "I can get a ring, but yeah, will you marry me?" Scarlett didn't need fanfare. She just nodded, grinning, and kissed him with coffee breath and joy in her veins. They married quietly, far from the noise. A forest ceremony in British Columbia with only their closest friends and family. She wore a simple ivory gown. He cried during his vows. She teased him for it, but wiped his tears with her fingers. They danced under string lights, slow and unhurried, like 2 people who had all the time in the world. But time is a strange thing. As their love deepened, so did their lives, and the pressure of those lives. Scarlett's career soared. She was cast in back-to-back films, critically acclaimed and box office hits. Ryan too found his stride, landing larger roles, becoming a household name. Schedules overlapped. One on a press tour while the other was on location. Weeks apart turned into months. They tried to stay tethered. Video calls, handwritten notes, red ice lights, but the gap grew, slow and silent. When they were together, the love still lived, but it was often weary, overshadowed by fatigue, by expectation, by the invisible weight of being perfect for a world that only saw them in headlines. There were arguments, not over betrayal, but over absence. "I need you to show up," Scarlett said one night, eyes rimmed with tiredness, "not just when it's convenient. And I need to feel like I'm not choosing between you and the rest of my life," Ryan replied, pain creeping into his voice. "I love you, but I'm losing me trying to keep us afloat." They always made up, always apologized, but the cracks stayed. Even love has gravity, and sometimes the fall is slow enough you don't realize you're landing. It wasn't one thing. That's what people always asked after. Was there a scandal, a betrayal? The world liked clean stories with sharp edges, but real endings are messier. They began to fade in the in-between, the moments between calls, between airport gates, between red carpet photos where their smiles dimmed just a little too early. Scarlett was filming in Prague when Ryan wrapped his comedy in Atlanta. He'd flown out to surprise her. He waited at her apartment, flowers, wine, dinner prepared. But when she came home, exhausted and guarded, she didn't melt into his arms like he'd hoped. "I can't do this tonight," she said, brushing past him. He paused, confused. "Can't do what? Eat? Talk to your husband?" "Can't pretend," she murmured, voice too tired to be sharp. That night, they sat on opposite sides of the bed, backs to each other. Neither slept, neither spoke. The silence between them wasn't cold, but it wasn't warm anymore either. They tried counseling. The therapist's office was beige and soft-voiced, filled with tissues and tension. "I feel like he wants me to pause my life every time he's free," Scarlett said one day, twisting a ring she no longer wore. "I just want to feel like a priority," Ryan replied, eyes flicking toward her. "Like I'm not always waiting for her to come back to us." "You knew what I did when you married me," she said. "And you knew who I was. I need the chaos, the jokes, the movement. It's how I breathe, Scar." That was the first time in weeks he called her Scar. Her eyes welled, but she didn't cry. She just nodded, like someone accepting a weather forecast she couldn't change. One afternoon, Lion returned home early from a meeting. Their New York apartment was still and dim, rain whispering against the windows. Scarlett was sitting on the floor in the living room, surrounded by open boxes, old photo albums, scripts, keepsakes from trips. "What are you doing?" he asked, the question falling too softly to carry blame. "I don't know," she said, trying to find something I missed, a version of us I forgot to save. He knelt beside her, pulling an old Polaroid from the pile. Iceland, 2006. They were in matching wool sweaters, noses red from cold, her head resting on his chest, both grinning like fools. "We were happy," he said. "We were young," she corrected, but not unkindly. He looked at her then, truly looked, not at the version he'd imagined, not the woman in magazine spreads or late-night interviews, just her, the girl from the bookstore, the lover in sweatpants, the ghost he was starting to grieve. "I still love you," he said. "I know," she whispered, "but we keep trying to fix a story that already ended." They separated quietly. No Instagram posts, no PR statements, just quiet calls to friends, a shared attorney, tears in different hotel rooms. The divorce was finalized on a Tuesday in early spring. Neither attended in person. She went to the sea that day, walking barefoot on a beach in Maine where they'd once spent a weekend. The wind stung her eyes, or maybe it was something else. He stayed in LA, holed up in a studio loft, eating cereal out of the box and watching old Buster Keaton films. He laughed once and startled himself with the sound. The press speculated. She wanted different things. He was too immature. Timing, fame, distance. None of them got it right. All of them got it a little right. They didn't speak for months, not out of hatred, just space. Space to breathe, to mourn, to rediscover who they were alone. Scarlett began painting again. Ryan took improv classes in secret. Each found healing in small, private victories. Then, one autumn evening, they ran into each other at a charity event in LA, two planets orbiting the same cause. He saw her first. She was laughing with someone, head thrown back, her joy untouched by time. He approached, cautious but smiling. "Hey," he said, like it hadn't been years. She turned, surprised, and smiled. "Hey." They talked for 10 minutes. No bitterness, no backward glances, just kindness, maybe even peace. As they said goodbye, she touched his arm lightly. "I hope you're happy, Ryan." "I am," he said. I hope you are too." "I'm getting there," she admitted, but this time she didn't sound broken, just human. Time, as always, did its work. Years passed, quiet and unannounced, like ocean tides sneaking into footprints. The world kept turning, and so did they, apart but not bitterly so. Scarlett moved into a brownstone in Brooklyn, a quieter place with ivy creeping along the brick and an attic studio where she sometimes painted or just sat in silence. She adopted a dog, an aging rescue named Otto, and began choosing roles more intentionally. She was still the movie star, still sharp-eyed and soft-voiced, but there was something new in her now, something steady. She'd learned that happiness wasn't a finish line, it was a series of small, brave choices. She dated a bit, fell in love again, married again. Differently this time, not with fireworks, but with warmth. A man who loved her not for her fame, but for her silences. They had a child, a daughter with Ryan's eyes, though of course, genetically, it meant nothing. Life is strange like that. Ryan, too, changed. He moved back to Canada for a time, just outside Vancouver, bought a quiet property by a lake where he learned to cook properly, wrote scripts that no one knew were his, and spent long afternoons paddleboarding with his nieces. Eventually, he returned to Hollywood, wiser and still funny, but less frantic. He starred in films that surprised critics. He directed one that won awards. He remarried to a woman who met him during a podcast interview. She wasn't famous, but she challenged him in all the right ways. They built a home full of music and sarcasm and midnight kitchen dance parties. He loved her deeply, but never erased the echoes of what had been. Sometimes, when he couldn't sleep, he'd walk to the lake and think of Scarlett, not with longing, but with gratitude, the kind reserved for people who changed your gravity. They saw each other now and then, at events, at mutual friends' weddings, once, awkwardly, in an airport lounge where they ended up sharing a laugh over stale coffee and the absurdity of airline snacks. Each time, there was a warmth, a shared history neither wanted to rewrite. They didn't reminisce too much, didn't pick at scars, but they held each other in their eyes a moment longer than most people would. One day, years after their parting, Scarlett was asked in an interview, "Do you believe in soulmates?" She smiled thoughtfully. "I believe some people are meant to change your life, to open a door or close one. Some stay, some don't. But love? Real love?" She paused. "It doesn't always last the way people expect, but it leaves something behind, like stardust. You don't see it, but it's there, in the way you smile, in the way you let yourself be known." Ryan, asked in a separate interview about past regrets, paused before answering. "No regrets," he said. "I've loved and lost in ways I wouldn't trade, even the hard parts, especially the hard parts. Some people are chapters, some are prologues, some are the whole first book." They never found their way back as lovers, but they didn't need to. Their story wasn't a failure. It was a full circle, a constellation of moments that lit up both of their skies, once. And when they saw each other for the last time, at a benefit concert, both now parents, both now complete in ways they hadn't been before, Scarlett reached over, touched his hand, and said, "We were beautiful, weren't we?" Ryan looked at her, eyes soft. "Yeah, we were." And then she walked away, not as the woman who had left him, but as the woman who had once loved him well. And he watched her bow, not with sorrow, but with a smile.